Welcome, dear friends of Turkish series stars, to our cozy virtual lounge where we gather each day to uncover the whispers, the pauses, and the quiet glances that say more than any headline ever could. Before we step into today's astonishing tale, one that has shaken timelines and stirred hearts, remember to subscribe, drop a like, and support this community by hitting the subscribe button. Your presence is the pulse of this space, and it's because of you that we can bring moments like this to life. Moments that arrive like a sudden wave and linger long after the waters seem calm. It all happened in a handful of minutes, yet the emotion of it has stretched through the day like a shadow you can't shake. Alina Bos, one of the most magnetic faces on Turkish screens, was seated on a live talk show to discuss her slate of new roles and the choices that led her here. The vibe was breezy, almost playful, until a single, deceptively simple question cast the room into another dimension. If you could relive just one moment from your past, what would it be? The studio stilled. Even the clink of a glass in the control room seemed to stop midair. You could feel it down to the bones of the building. Something real was about to surface. Alina lowered her eyes, drew in a measured breath, and when she lifted her gaze, there was a glassy sheen that revealed more than words could. Her voice was steady at first, then tender, vulnerable, a thread drawn straight from the center of her heart. "Maybe I shouldn't say this," she murmured, "but I would relive that afternoon with Alp. It felt like time stopped just for us." She pushed through a fragile smile as her throat tightened, but the next line arrived fractured, and then came the tears. No one in the studio knew which way to look. But the millions watching at home? They knew exactly what they were witnessing. Within minutes, that clip spread everywhere, swift, relentless, a tide no algorithm could resist. She wasn't done. Alina added a sentence that hit like the echo of something we've all tried to bury once or twice. What we felt was real. And even though I tried to move past it, it hasn't left me. Her fingertips hovered over her chest as if to mark the spot, as if that chapter, folded but never sealed, still lived there with its own steady heartbeat. Behind the curtain, producers scrambled, trying to nudge the conversation back into safe territory, but the current had already changed. Whatever edge she had walked along in silence had now been stepped over in daylight. When Alina left the studio, the city was draped in a delicate drizzle, each drop seeming to echo the tremor of her confession. Outside the main doors, the swarm of microphones and camera lenses converged like a sudden storm. A single question pierced through the chatter with uncanny precision. "Are you still in touch with Alp Navas?" Alina paused, and in that beat lived 1,000 unsent messages. Then she answered, barely above a whisper, "We haven't spoken in a while. But I know he carries memories that refuse to fade." That line, released into the misty evening, became the spark that fanned an already blazing conversation. What did she mean? Which memories? Why now? The questions multiplied across continents, skipping time zones like stones over water. No definitive answers, only implications thick enough to make the world lean in closer. While the internet roared, another quiet scene unfolded on the other side of the city. Alp Navas was seen near a recording studio, a place he often visits between shoots. He had made no statement yet. But witnesses say that when a reporter gently repeated Alina's words, Alp lowered his gaze and said, in a calm, nearly inaudible tone, "Sometimes silence speaks louder than words." That single sentence reverberated everywhere, setting off a cascade of memories, edits, and theories. Timelines filled with old clips, interviews, and candid moments once brushed off as coincidence. Fans brought back photos from award nights, from charity events where they stood side by side, from after-parties where the light seemed to catch them in unguarded glances. One comment read like a verdict whispered in a quiet courtroom, "We never got over them, because they never truly did either." Another insisted, "This isn't nostalgia. This is something still alive." Then came a gesture from Alina that poured even more feeling onto the fire. Hours after the broadcast, she posted a black and white photo of a faraway horizon at dusk, the kind of sky that looks like a memory. Beneath it, a single line, "Sometimes memories are stronger than the present." Was it for someone? A message sent into the wind? Or a confession too delicate to name any other way? Shortly afterward, as if answering with a different language, Alp shared a wistful song. The title, I Still Feel You. The lyrics touched on a love you never truly say goodbye to, a presence that lingers even in the spaces where you've decided to part. It was hard not to connect the dots. The public did the math without hesitation. And then, as if the story needed one more thread to tie it to the heart, an anonymous source close to the pair spoke to a journalist. The detail fell like a pebble in a very still pond. Alp apparently still has a letter Alina wrote during the final days of their relationship. He keeps it with him, said the source, like a treasure and like a wound. Some say he drafted a reply he never delivered. Others claim he simply carried her words with him, folded and refolded until the paper remembered the shape of his hands. What could the letter have said? Why was a response never sent? And can a story paused so carefully still find its rhythm again? Long before this latest storm, Alp had once said in an interview, with that grounded calm that is so distinctly his. There are people who leave such a deep mark that, even when you change direction, you somehow circle back to where you started. Revisited now, those words feel like a shadow cast ahead of time, a quiet prophecy only understood in hindsight. Different schedules, new scripts, life pulling each of them towards separate horizons, and yet the lighting of a shared past still flickers in the background. There are endings that close like a book snapped shut. Others soften into silence and vanish in the ordinary. And then there are stories like this one, suspended between breaths, keeping time with a heartbeat you thought you'd forgotten. In the most charged instant of the interview, Alina said something that may well live forever in the minds of those who have followed them from the beginning. Some people are irreplaceable. And Alp was, is, and maybe always will be one of those. A door left ajar. A candle burning low but steady. A feeling that refuses to be filed away. Later that night, the directors of the talk show released a short note about how live television sometimes brings to the surface what even the careful cannot keep down. They thanked Alina for her honesty. They didn't have to say the rest. The moment had crested, and yet the tide kept returning. Industry insiders whispered about old plans that never saw daylight. A project the two were supposed to read for together, a last-minute change that sent them in different directions, a chance meeting at a festival where they lingered longer than a hello requires. None of it confirmed, all of it fitting a narrative that feels, in part, too cinematic to be invented. Meanwhile, outside the studio orbit, life went on with an uncanny normalcy. Alina's team posted set photos from her latest production, all smiles and soft lighting. Alp was seen arriving at a gym, headphones on, focus forward. Yet even in the most ordinary images, people searched for traces of what might be circling back. Was that a ring she always wears or one she brought back from a time the public has only seen at a distance? Was that a familiar jacket on his shoulder or just the ghost of a memory layered onto fabric and frame? What nobody could choreograph was the timing. How a single question, tossed into a casual moment, could pull the thread that unravels the boundary between the past and the present. How the right sentence, spoken at the wrong moment, or perhaps the only possible one, can redraw the shape of what we thought was settled. If the cameras had been off, maybe the confession would have stayed tucked inside her, kneeling behind the ribcage, waiting for a safer season. But they were rolling. And once real tears find the air, they never truly disappear. Days like this remind us why we gather here, why Turkish series Stars is more than a channel. It's a place where we hold space for the lucky and the unlucky, for love that fits and love that never quite finds its edges. Because the truth is, even when the world believes it's seeing the whole picture, there are always margins. And sometimes, in those margins, two people find a way to speak to each other across all the noise. This is not a call for certainty. It is a moment taken by the hand and walked to the center of the room, asked to occupy the chair it deserves. Perhaps nothing will change. Perhaps everything will. Perhaps Alina's words were simply a way of honoring something that shaped her, the way an echo belongs to the voice but is not the voice itself. Or perhaps those words were a map, a compass pointing quietly toward a place only two people know how to find. There's a particular grace in the way Alina carries her vulnerability, strong yet unguarded, elegant but sincere, and it has always been part of her appeal. Alp, with that steady presence and the grounded warmth that has drawn so many viewers to his performances, has his own way of keeping feelings private until they matter most. Maybe that's why this felt so seismic. It wasn't just the confession. It was who made it, and how. It was the way the atmosphere thickened and the room fell still, as if everyone understood that what was said would be remembered long after the set was struck and the trailer lights were switched off. If you've ever found yourself standing in the rain, feeling a name settle on your tongue like a vow you never spoke, then you know the texture of this moment. You know what it means to point at your chest and say, "It's still here." You know how a song you didn't write can feel like it was written for you, how a sunset can say what you can't. You understand why a letter remains folded in a pocket long after it has outlived its reason, why silence sometimes gathers its own kind of courage. Maybe in a week, the world will move on to the next spark, the next rumor, the next wave. Or maybe this one will keep humming, a low note beneath the rest of the music, surfacing in unexpected places. A line in a new script. A glance at a premiere. A quiet greeting uttered just out of frame. Stories like this don't always ask permission. They just arrive, and they stay, and they outlast our predictions. So here we are, all of us, holding our breath a little. Is this the beginning of something finding its way back? Or is it the blessing of a love that shaped two people and then released them, leaving behind a tenderness that will not turn bitter? In the end, time is the only writer who never misses a deadline. Time will decide which pages get turned and which remain pressed between covers that never fully close. Dear Turkish series stars viewers, what do you think this moment means? Is it a sign pointing toward reconciliation, or the final, gentle salute of a heart still learning how to rest? Tell us in the comments. Share which stars you want us to follow next. And remember to support this space with a like, a subscription, and, if you want to be part of our extended family, by clicking the subscribe button. Until the next story, and there will always be a next story, stay with us here, where feelings don't just pass through. They find a home. Turkish series stars.